Hello everybody and welcome back to The Low Show. My name is Robin and today I'm extra excited because we have a special guest in studio. We're welcoming Tim Powers to come in and talk to us about his experience as an Acmpr grower as well as an expert in cannabis flower extractions. So we'll be talking about some concentrates. I'm really looking forward to that, as well as I have a personal challenge. I'm going to show you how fast I can grow a beard and a mustache. So seriously, I can feel it growing, so stay tuned and we'll see what happens in the near future. Hey everybody, thank you for joining us at The Low Show. This is episode 8. My name is Robin and I'm here with Tim. Tim, thank you so much for joining us. We're here today to talk about the cannabis industry and where it's come to, where it's been, and where we feel it might be going. So just to get things started, may I ask, Tim, what is your relationship with cannabis?
I've had a long relationship with cannabis. I'm a medical patient, as well as I guess you'd say, a recreational user.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, I've been using cannabis for, I think the 26 years is the actual number.
26 years?
Yeah.
So in your experience with various types of concentrates, whether it be a hash product or a hydrocarbon or even, let's say, like a flower rosin, what would be the main differences as far as, say, pricing, desired effect, and kind of like if you were trying to show off a little bit? What's all the difference between these forms of concentrates?
Well, let's see. I guess we could kind of split things into a few different groups, I would say. So your more traditional like hashes and rosins, which are not utilizing any other compounds to extract it, such as CO2 or ethanol.
Right.
So you could kind of like have that off on the side, I would say, and say you have solventless products, as it's been coined by...
So that could be dry sift, that can be bubble hash.
Yeah, so solventless, I would say, could be charas, which would be just from rubbing the plant, the live plant itself, and then gathering the resins on your hands and then collecting all those resins, to water extraction, which would be taking those live plants, freezing them, washing them, like in a washing machine, essentially.
Tumbling them with ice and water.
Yeah, and then collecting the resin.
That falls off.
Sift, a dry sift would be similar, except no water. You'd be tumbling it, using a screen to sift out the heads. So all of those would be like fairly natural, fairly easy to obtain, not a lot of equipment needed.
Right.
And more traditional methods, like these sort of methods have been in practice for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
And when people say, yo, turn that into rosin, what are they talking about?
So when people rosin something, generally it just means they're applying heat and pressure using some sort of a filter. So they would put their flour or hash, one of these different hash products, in one of these filter bags and then apply heat and pressure. So essentially just between like two hot plates.
Right.
And then the rosin, as it's been coined,
oozes out.
Essentially you're just purifying it. You're removing contaminant.
Yeah, for sure. Removing plant body and so obviously rosin can come in different forms as well, whether it's flower rosin pressed straight from the flowers, or if it's coming from hash.
Yep.
We can get it that way from dry sift as well. Let's get into more of the hydrocarbons then.
So yeah, hydrocarbon, I would say, is a pretty broad, I think is the biggest component of our current market.
Right.
It has the most product lines, I would say. You kind of highlighted the three main solventless as sift, bubble hash, and kind of rosin. Hydrocarbons have a ton of names.
Right. Shatter.
Yeah, shatter, wax.
Yeah, wax. Like people just call it dabs. They'll call it slabs. Call it, yeah.
Yeah, so I think hydrocarbon has more quote-unquote different forms, but essentially they're still all the same.
Yeah, exactly. HTFSE.
Yeah.
You know,
so,
HTE.
Yeah, so most of these things are just trying to describe, say, the ratio between THCA or cannabinoids and terpenes. And essentially that's just a visual expression,
Right.
What they would call these things.
When you do a hydrocarbon extract and you purge it in a vacuum purger, what are we talking about when we say that?
So you're essentially just removing the butane and propane that was used in the extraction.
So we put the extract, which is still chocked full of certain parts per million of
Yeah, essentially it'd
butane.
be like a liquid.
Liquid, yeah.
And so the cannabinoids and terpenes are held in solution.
We reverse pressure it.
Yeah, so we want to lower the atmospheric pressure,
Yep.
which helps purge off.
Purge off
So
the-
we use heat and lowering pressure, and then that's generally how people will get rid of the gases.
And then when we don't vacuum purge it, we're trying to attempt to make diamonds, possibly? Is that...
Yeah, I mean, I guess the different techniques, I don't know, I'll probably go into too much detail on, because a lot of people will have different
For sure.
theories on different things, but essentially they're all just different physical forms.
Yeah, of cannabis. Because some people, they just want diamonds.
Yeah, so a diamond would essentially mean a very pure form of THCA. So again, like whether it's in shatter or a diamond or a wax, it essentially all just boils down to the same thing, which I think all concentrates do, which is the purity,
Right.
meaning how many, like what is the percentage of cannabinoids and terpenes comparatively to undesirables or
Right.
contaminants.
Non-psychoactive or non-beneficial cannabinoids and particles. Yeah.
Yeah, so hydrocarbons could be called a ton of different things. Generally speaking, though, they're all just physical forms.
Yeah.
There isn't a lot difference, chemically speaking, between, say, shatter and a wax.
Fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were talking about how, before legalization happened, October 17th, 2018, the gray market was fairly established, with the experience that people in Vancouver, at least, were able to expect. We're quite lucky to be living in Vancouver. For one, it's the most beautiful city in Canada, but also as a cannabis enthusiast, it was probably the widest range of access for high quality cannabis with reasonable pricing. Is that something that we're never going to see again in the legal market, or?
That's hard to say, I guess. I think you're right, though. I think the market was well developed.
It was.
I think there were reasonable expectations on the part of the consumer as well as the businesses engaged in providing those products. There were over 100 locations in our city where you could access those products. So yeah, I think there was a very good system working with small businesses, working with one another to provide a good service for the consumer themselves, where they could get education, where they could get a lot of things that they're not actually able to get in the current retail setting. So I think, yeah, the gray market was well established. I think it was a big fail on the government's part to build off of that instead of tearing it all down and trying to start from scratch. So yeah, I think here in Vancouver, it was maybe not the norm, I'd say in terms of across Canada.
Yeah.
I think we were definitely more developed than some of the areas. And I think that development comes just through, I don't know, I guess just good business practices,
Most definitely. I love that a lot of companies that were able to operate previous to legalization are given a chance to become licensed and operational legally. Obviously, that changes their sourcing of product and their ability to control pricing on their shelves. So the experience that we have in the legal store versus the gray market, there's a clear difference.
Oh, for sure. I think it's going to be years before we see again that diversity of products, that diversity of price points.
And accountability.
The accountability. Most of these companies, you could just go on Instagram or whatever and send them a message and they would fix the problem.
Right.
I've read countless horror stories of people trying to engage the new legal system and just the company actually being handcuffed by the regulatory system itself of being able to just send them out a free replacement or something, and they're not even able to.
Right.
So I think On the business side of it, there's lots to develop in terms of the relationships between gardens and extractors.
Right.
The relationships between those companies producing the products and the retailer, and the relationship between the retailer and the consumer. I think it's years before we'll see that same
I
thing.
agree. If I were to ask you what separates the black market from the gray market, how would you answer that?
I think it's all the same. Like, I think it's just how some people choose to use certain terminology.
It's like a framing.
Legacy, or
Right, legacy brands. I mean, that's I like how that sounds.
yeah. I mean, to me, it's simple. Like, there's legal and there's illegal.
That's how the feds would define
Yeah, and
it,
I
for
think,
sure.
aside from that, I would just put like that there's some people would try to say there's like a moral component of that.
Right.
So
I mean,
I don't look at it like that. I just look at it like if you have a tax stamp from the government, you're legal, and if you don't, you're illegal.
so that's by definition absolutely correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there's a culture of, especially Vancouverites, that recognize this gray market being, unregulated, unlicensed, but still a certain ethical kind of
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean about the
forward-driven.
moral
Yeah,
component
exactly.
of it. Like,
Exactly.
there's nobody's being harmed. There's no
That's right.
There's no foul play.
That's
it
right.
just doesn't have a tax stamp.
The average Canadian does have a budget that they're able to spend on cannabis, and if that budget doesn't fit into the current legal kind of price point expectations, what do we think they're going to do?
Well, I think these things have already been established. Canadians have been consuming cannabis for decades.
Right.
People have been smoking concentrates for up to a decade. So these habits, these budgets, these norms have already been set in place. So
Right.
yeah, if the new retail regime doesn't fulfill those
Expectations.
preset expectations, then they're just going to continue on with what they've been doing.
Which is probably, losing money.
Yeah, I think most of the programs across Canada are losing money.
Yeah, interesting.
The provincial framework that they've put in place is more expensive than the revenue they're earning.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And
So
British Columbia is a hub.
They've all put the cart before the horse, for sure.
Yeah. I don't know exact numbers, but I recall British Columbia had some of the lowest out of all provinces for cannabis sales for 2018, 19.
Yeah.
And I think that's a cultural thing. I think that people in BC especially have a lot of friends who either grow for personal or grow for medical use. But either way, it's going to be kind of a stretch for everyone just to flip the switch and start going to stores when it does come down to dollars and cents more so than even safe access.
Expectation as well, right? Like those norms have already been established.
Yeah.
So price is one of them, quality, access, these will all play into it. And because we're dealing with such a developed consumer, they do have expectations.
Yes, exactly. And they let us know it.
Yeah. And I think if we can kind of compare and just kind of look across the border into Washington, you can get some amazing quality products
That's for sure.
at really good price points.
Yeah, we're talking things I've seen are like really high-end hash oil that's maybe $70 American a gram, whereas you and I actually
Or
got
even cheaper.
Or even cheaper, exactly. That's a bit on the higher end. There's some really top-end companies that are coming in around that price, maybe a bit more, a bit less. But you and I got to sit down a few days ago and experience some Canadian legal live rosin from Whistler Cannabis, and it was a full spectrum gram that we were able to look at, and it did cost about $200, just over $200 after tax in the legal system. So,
Interesting note. So I had in a conversation in DM and Instagram, I mentioned to someone that I'd tried that product.
yeah,
This person was actually an owner of a retail store.
okay.
So he said, "What did you pay?" I said, "I think my friend paid $165
Before tax, yeah.
before tax." And he said, "Well, we got it on the shelf at $135."
So there's that. I noticed, and that actually triggers another point. So store to store, I don't think there's a lot of,
Well, they can't really advertise. Like you can't.
How do they
put
communicate?
a store out, or a sign out front of your store saying we have this product at this price.
True. So when it comes to your selecting a cannabis for the evening, what makes you determine a concentrate or a flower? Whether it's evening or morning, it doesn't matter. Why do you choose concentrates in general?
I think initially it was the strength,
Okay.
the potency.
Yes.
You know, you can have one dab, and that's like the same as consuming a whole joint.
Yeah, in one breath.
So I think at a certain point it was the potency, the experience of flavor.
Right.
I think as the concentrates got better, that became one of the primary factors.
Most definitely.
The true essence of the plant, the flavor of the plant, the high, everything that it was seemed to just be better and more concentrated.
Exactly.
I.e. concentrates. And so then that became kind of the experience that I was chasing.
Right.
Yeah, and I think now, I think we talked about this before, I've got a young son and a couple businesses that keep me pretty busy. And so now it's time. So it's all of those things, you know, the strength, the experience of flavor, etc. But now it's also even more so it's time.
Yes,
I
time.
don't have 20 minutes a lot of times to sit and roll a joint and smoke it. I got 2 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
So a dab like really fulfills that. The concentrates really fulfill that. One toke, I've got a really nice experience of the flavors.
Right. What did you think of the live rosin that we tried from Whistler Cannabis?
Yeah, I thought it was. I think it was a good start. Like in terms of a connoisseur grade product, say I don't think it's there. And I think price point wise, it's even at the lower quoted price from a competitor retailer. It's still too expensive for what I could buy on the gray and or black market. And generally speaking, I can get a more diverse experience on that gray or black market. That was one product. It wasn't strain specific.
No, we didn't know what we were consuming.
And really, there are no other options.
Nope.
So it's a pretty bland experience.
Yeah.
As a
Okay.
consumer.
Fair.
So,
For sure. Any positives?
Yeah, I thought the product was it was clean.
Yeah. Smooth.
I have confidence in the system that there aren't contaminants.
Yeah.
That there aren't pesticides.
For sure.
Which are some things that if your producers of gray market stuff aren't engaged in testing, then you can't have ultimate confidence.
Right.
So I think that confidence factor was, for me, the biggest thing of saying, like, look, this is undoubtedly going to be a safe product to consume.
Yeah.
I think that's a great factor. But in terms of pricing, you know, the overall quality of like the flavor experience and I'd say that was lacking.
Yeah. I'd agree with you there for sure.
But I think it's a good starting point. Being an activist that fought long and hard against our government to get this sort of product into the position that it's in, I'm happy to see that that's the case.
No doubt. Yeah, you've had skin in the game for quite some time, and you kind of have donated some hours to a couple causes that you.
Yep.
Or would you care to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, we did a lot of work to help with the Acmpr Coalition Against Repeal was the name of the organization. Essentially, it was our government trying to take away our right to grow legal cannabis for ourselves. And in around the same time frame, there was another court case where a baker from the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club was busted. And so again, this kind of was more to do with concentrates, where that specific defense of that case was them arguing that other forms of cannabis, aside from dried flower, were important for medical patients.
Right.
And so I agreed with that, being my actual license, my prescription as it is to eat hash. Like that is what's actually been prescribed to me.
That sounds so healthy to me.
So that it just made sense that what my doctor suggested me doing wasn't available, and the government's arguing isn't even legal.
Right.
So I put a lot of work into some fundraising for that case as well, and ultimately both were successful. the baker's charges were dismissed on the grounds that
Excellent.
he should be able to turn his cannabis into edibles or
Yep.
hash or whatever he chooses to. And ultimately, our right to grow our own cannabis
Right.
was cemented as well.
In hindsight, it's interesting when laws change forward legally, where do we see there being a happy medium between pricing, options in types of concentrates, and quality? Where
Well,
do
I think ultimately we will get to that place where there was 100 retail spaces selling 10 or 20 different choices of concentrates. I think we'll get back to that spot. It's going to take a while. Pricing, I think we're at a bit of a disconnect right now.
Yes.
That could be because of just inflated costs to produce because of the legal market.
Yep.
It could be gouging.
It could be gouging. Now, there's more people in California than all of Canada, so maybe the demands of the people need to be louder and need to be heard, and nothing speaks louder than.
We'll see that play out if the consumer isn't spending.
Yeah, that's
and they're
really
spending
what it
in
is.
the gray area.
Yeah.
Then ultimately those businesses will have to lower the prices if they want to get any sales.
That's right. There's still a couple.
So I think the balance of what the public corporations want in terms of billions of revenue, and what the consumer is used to paying and wants to pay, I think will balance out.
I hear that.
And I think these producers will be forced to diversify products, will be forced to improve their products to compete, just like those companies did in the gray area.
Do you think it'll just be a legacy brand takeover? Once, do you think so let me rephrase the question. Do you think that the micro aspect of cultivation and extract making is going to improve competition, improve prices, and basically save the industry?
Yeah, I think where I'm excited about concentrates is in the craft, as it were.
Yes.
The small producers, the really passionate people who are doing small scale projects
Right.
With purpose, as opposed to just like mass agriculture and mass production of hash. So to me, I don't think I'm ever going to get excited about our largest corporations' products that they're putting out, simply because of the nature of business that they're doing and the decisions that lead up to that.
Yeah, and the end result of commercial
Exactly.
growing versus a craft.
And I'm not that excited about buying large scale anything.
No, I understand that.
And I think most of our generation and like our consumers nowadays are coming along with all these sorts of things. So I think cannabis is no different.
Right.
I think that a small and middle level, or small and mid-level businesses being integral to it, I think is definitely the case.
Yeah. So we're finding that there are some brands that are being purchased by several LPs. And why do you think that they're so motivated to do that?
I think a lot of it has to do with their inability to obtain any sort of brand equity with the consumer, both because of the nature of the product that they're putting out in competition with those gray area, black market, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But also, too, because of the regulatory framework that they have to operate in. It's going to be tough and expensive for them to acquire
True.
Customers. So the easiest way to do that will be to tap into a brand that has already built that trust and that brand equity.
They'll have to be very careful with how they release those products, because I feel as though the consumer generally will give one chance to a company to release a product and give it a try. And I've got my preferred legacy companies that I can't wait to see hit the market. And if they were to have kind of like that hydrocarbon ethanol cartridge end result, that'd be fairly disappointing.
Yeah, they'll burn the value of the brand.
They'll burn the value
sure.
of the brand. So that's something that should be looked at. And that's where I have confidence that a lot of these craft operators will say, hey there, the buck stops here. If you want to buy me, I need some control over the end result, because in a lot of cases, this is their life's work, their pride and joy, and if they were to sell it and not be a part of it, then that's one thing. But to become a legacy brand and be involved and hopefully, really dictate the quality and have it true to where it was previously, that's exciting.
Yeah, I think most of these producers now are doing it because they really want to.
Yes.
Obviously, business and economics are a factor. Probably most of them, though, could run another business and with way less risk.
Right.
do reasonably okay financially, So I think they want to be in it. They're excited about producing these products. I don't think that's the same at the other level, at the other side of things.
No way.
No, I mean, like say the chain of employees working at XYZ Corporation where they're launching some line of hash, like the passion is not the same.
I have to agree with you there for sure.
And the decision making that drives all of these things isn't the same either.
Agreed.
So
I mean, so much has happened in the last couple of years. Based on what we've been able to observe so far, if I were a person who wanted to become a micro LP or a concentrate producer, what is the main thorn in my side when it comes to getting this all set up?
I think investment, like finance, is definitely one.
You need lots of money.
Currently, right now, yeah, you need.
But it's craft; it should be small.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain thresholds in terms of land use and ownership, being able to show that you have possession of the property that you're going to be doing your application on. A recent change that makes it, which I actually think this recent change is good and reduces the amount of speculators, but you have to build your building now. So you have to have a purpose-built building on land that you have long-term lease or ownership of.
Wow.
And then you can submit. So the cost of doing that is a lot.
So one can assume we'll need well over $1 million to get this thing from ground up.
I would say so, yeah.
Just throwing that out there. Okay. So money is a huge, obviously an objective for a person starting a micro LP.
And it's not just the cost, it's the ability to obtain capital. A bank isn't going to make this sort of a loan.
They're not going to lend it. So it almost has to be from a private investor, essentially?
Yeah, I think a lot of the more institutional forms of finance that other industries would be able to enjoy are not necessarily open to cannabis.
Right. Yeah.
As well as with the very poor performance of cannabis stocks.
True.
It has a lot of people apprehensive about making that sort of investment.
Absolutely true.
So I think, yeah, the cannabis investor that you're looking for is a singular person, as it were, someone that
an angel investor.
Yeah, that knows the industry and can deal with some of the risks and that you don't just find these people.
No, definitely
not. You can't just pick up a...
Typically, they'll find you if you have, some value to you.
So I think that is the problem, is being able to acquire the capital to even get their vision off the ground. And then once they have engaged it, I think the government could do a better job of getting these people through regulatory processes and into operating businesses.
So there's a lot of red tape involved.
Definitely.
Yeah. How about on the municipal government level? Is there...
I think it's at all levels, right? Municipally, provincially, and federally. There are a lot of barriers that are probably not needed, or at least not needed to the degree that they're in place. But a lot of this has been done. I think we all have to understand that the guise of regulation, we need to listen to what the government that rolled it out said. This was done to protect kids and to thwart gangsters.
Hey, I'm into that, yeah.
This wasn't rolled out to say, give consumers a great experience.
Okay, yeah,
or to
that's a
allow
fantastic point.
For good business. So I think the objective at which a lot of these programs have set up were not meant for the things that we're talking about to have success. They were meant so that the government can say, oh, we stopped kids from getting cannabis. So I don't think it'll change it now. So I think when they understand that the success of that program isn't about that is a separate societal issue, that if you want cannabis consumers to enjoy what they're doing and businesses to be able to survive providing that service, then you might have to approach it from that perspective.
Makes sense to me. And at a certain point, if the objective is to take away sales from the black market and control the age of people purchasing cannabis, we've got to, get these dispensaries and these micro LPs some support. You know, you got to have their voice be heard. So hopefully people can hear it on our program here. And if we were to say anything to the regulatory bodies, if we had any sort of message to them, what would we want them to hear from us?
For me, I mean, my view is probably not shared by average soccer mom of Canada, say.
Okay,
But I think cannabis is a fairly harmless plant. So I think the barriers need to be completely reduced. My idea of legal is this ceramic cup.
Yeah.
It can be bought, sold, traded.
Yeah.
There's no regulatory burden on it. So if the government wants real success in an actual market, I think that they need to reduce all or as many of these regulatory burdens as possible, and just do what all consumers would want, which was to help satisfy their uncertainty about a clean and safe product. To me, that is the only point of what the government should be involved in.
Right.
And then making that as simple as possible.
Mandatory testing, etc.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Test your weed before you sell it, and then, if you're not, you're liable for hurting people.
Absolutely. Just like the food industry, right?
Yeah.
Cheers to that. Well, that was a really healthy discussion. I really appreciate you coming here and giving me some of your time, giving our viewers some of your time. You're a wealth of knowledge and a person who has been involved in activism for many, many years. And I feel a great honor having you on the show. So thank you so much.
It was my pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
That was my pleasure.
Yeah, awesome, man. Thank you again, everyone, for watching The Low Show. Thank you to Tim Powers, my guest. And my name is Robin. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you for next episode. Don't you not subscribe. Choked.